Okay, we're studying a short series of lessons on what is truth from John chapter 18, verse 37 through 30, and first part of verse 38, where Jesus is on trial before Pilate. He comes out bloodied, bruised, humiliated, and Pilate says, "And you are a king?" And Jesus says, well, that's the purpose of my being born, and my purpose with coming here was to reveal the truth. I think, bear witness to the truth. And everyone who listens to, or everyone who is of the truth listens to my voice, Jesus said. So Pilate says to him, what is truth? And we talked last week about the Bible teaching that truth is objective. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except by me. And in John 1 through 3, critical passage there, because it speaks of the eternal nature of Jesus Christ. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. Everything was made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. He is that reason. He is the reason for everything here. All this was created by him, through him, and for him. I believe that's in the Colossian letter. And everything subsists because of him. And with the power of his word, he was able to say, let there be light. And there was light. And everything, let this happen, let this happen, let this happen. And the Holy Spirit then forms, molds, shapes it, causes it to be. One word from Jesus, and this is all done. This whole universe. Tetelestai, it is finished. That's all he's going to have to say. It's finished, it's over, it's done. Now it's time for judgment. He will judge the whole world. So he is, as the book of Revelation talks about, Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end. We would say from A to Z, but their alphabet started with Alpha and ended with Omega, with a long O. So the beginning and the end. He's the start, he's the author, but he's also the finisher of our faith. So that's why it's so important to understand the objective nature of truth as the Bible gives it. Because, and here's where we pick up for today, modern philosophy would have you believe that no one, or that you cannot know anything for certain, that all truth is subjective and relative. Subjective meaning everybody has their own idea of what truth is. Relative, it just doesn't matter. It's on, okay, got a big thing going in Washington, D.C. right now. Does truth matter? What is truth? One side sees truth as something, and another side sees truth as something. They can both be wrong, but they can't both be right. So somewhere along the line there has to be an understanding of truth. And it just doesn't matter. Well, truth, it's relative because nothing matters. And this is what I was talking about. The old preacher who said, and he was old at the time, and he's been gone for several years, but philosophy is a blind man in a dark room looking for a black cat that isn't there. That is the essence of futility. So a philosopher, or just any person, what is philosophy in the first place?
Predictor.
It's observations over, I guess you can say it's a conglomeration of observations over multiple people and or things that occur to make a summary of all of them put together.
Be a form of
Amen.
a form of their belief, maybe, about something.
Well, that's me to repeat that.
Okay.
What they think it might be, it may not be someone else, but it's their version of what they think it is, something along
A
those lines.
formulated belief
Yeah.
is very good. Charlie, you have any idea?
Now,
You gonna let Bobby have an idea?
big guy what you want.
Say what you want, Bobby.
It was kind of like in the Enlightenment era, you know, when I talk about that in history, we had all these philosophers that tried to tell you their beliefs on God or Christianity, things like that. They're formulated, as you said, opinion, whether it may be true or not. It's their, it kind of comes down to their own opinion,
Okay,
in a sense.
Karen? Nothing?
I was gonna say something like it's their idea, but it'd be kind of like what he's saying, your opinion.
Okay. But you said formulated idea, was that formulated? I have to go back.
Opinion, they formulated opinion or idea,
Or
something like that.
idea of what thing,
Of
but
the subject they're talking about.
that's a key, the formulation. In other words, there's a pattern set down that says this is this and this is this and this is why this happens and all. And here's the problem. When we're talking about worldly philosophies, it gets into what Denise was talking about. It's just they study people and study things and then come up with this formulated idea of what truth is. And the problem that we have is that philosophers will look into society, or they'll look into all the peoples of the world and this and that, but they're in that dark room looking for that black cat that isn't there. And they're blinded because they're not looking outside to see if there is something objective. They start with the principle of subjectivity and say this is why it is. Philosophy, philo in the Greek, phileo, love, okay, brotherly love, but it's a love for something. It's a love for sophy. Well, what's sophy? Well, that's knowledge or truth or wisdom. When you get up to 9th grade, they call them freshmen, right? Because they're brand new coming to high school. But when they're sophomores, what are they? What does sophomore mean?
They're not much better than the freshmen.
It means a little bit more than that. But sophomore means the wise fool.
I
The
wouldn't
wise
call
fool.
sophomores.
The freshman is like a fool, but the sophomore, he's got just enough knowledge or just enough wisdom to get him in trouble.
Right, not as stupid as the freshman.
That really describes the current class.
Okay, there are reasons for these terms that are out there. So if someone's acting sophomorish, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to point at Lance there. If someone's acting sophomorish, what does that mean? They think they know something, but they really don't. Now, who's that sophomore gonna tell?
Another sophomore.
No, they're gonna tell the freshman. This teacher is mean. You don't want to go to her class or his class or whatever. And freshman believes it because such a wise person there.
Formatted opinion.
Hey,
Yeah.
to a degree,
Yeah.
but they think they're wise. And the sophist, someone who is a sophist is is a person who kind of think of the Stoics. And the book of Acts talks about some of the Stoics. And they're called Stoics because they were on the stoas. They'd get up on the porches and they would just teach. And they would teach anything, talk about anything to try to get people to pay them just for speaking. That's kind of like theater, I guess. But you see, it becomes a philosophy, and the Stoics in particular were kind of harsh in their thinking about things. Stoicism, you know, comes along with it. And I think that's right. If I'm wrong, I'll stand corrected. I'm pretty sure that was the Stoics. Stoa is a porch. But Paul talked to the philosophers on Mars Hill. and they could go along with a lot of stuff. Hey, yeah, we got room for another God in our panoply of gods, but you're talking about somebody being raised from the dead? We just can't go for that. Well, why not? Because that's something that's outside of the thinking of what this world is. Same thing occurs today, right? You talk to somebody about Jesus was resurrected from the dead. I don't see it, I can't believe it. Well, that's why it's a miracle. You don't see it. If it happened every day, it wouldn't be a miracle, would it? It happened on very rare occasions. It was something that was supernatural, which means beyond nature, above nature. Okay? Here's nature. People live and people die. Why does that happen? Well, we're told in the scriptures why that happens. Because man is in a state of rebellion. Not all men, okay? And we could go through that. So understand what I'm talking about. And even when Paul's talking about, and the Old Testament's talking about, for all of sin to come short of the glory of God, not talking about everybody, but it's talking about everybody who's come to an age of accountability who has rejected God. And rejected God maybe in just the sense, or simply in the sense of sinning. So philosophy is a love of wisdom. I want to know how all this fits together. How does all this world come together? What makes sense? And if what I'm studying is the world, I can say, well, here's what makes sense. Utilitarianism. People just want to be happy. Do what makes you feel good. In other words, what it comes from is that if you study a group of people, this group of people, if they have a decision to make about something, they will do something that they'll make the decision that makes the greater number of that group happy. That's why you had slavery for so many years. It makes this group happy. It doesn't make this group happy. They're slaves. You know what the reasoning was? What then the reasoning for that? Say, but we're taking care of these people. They can't take care of themselves. Doesn't that sound like government today?
Amen.
Sounds like government today. We know best. We know what's best for everybody, and you know, you Christians, you're all mentally ill anyway. Well, if you're studying that, and there's no objective standard by which to gauge it, you're going to have subjectivism and relativism, and truth won't matter. Everybody lives by their own truth, and if you do that, you do not have a culture. You don't really have a society that works. And you see things happening today in our society that have been tried other places over the centuries and failed, and yet they want to try it again here because, well, United States, America is different. America is going to be the best chance for something like this to work. No, it's going to be the highest point of destruction of the freedoms of human beings. What is the ultimate freedom of a human being?
Salvation.
Well, that's true. That's what comes of it. But what is the highest activity or thought process of freedom, of liberty?
To be able to do what you want, when you want.
Very close. To be able to have a relationship with your Creator. Okay. With God. To believe in God. Now, in order to be free, we have to give people the opportunity, the right to the same thing. And their God may be something totally different. Their God may be a tree that's been carved into a statue somewhere. But we give them that liberty. Why? because if we don't, what will they do to ours?
Take ours away from us.
Okay? So we can say, I have no trouble saying, you can be wrong about something. Okay? Somebody else can be wrong. Lance, you've got the right to be wrong. But without your right to be wrong, I give up my right to be right. And that, we've had a lot of problems with that in Christianity. We've had a lot of problems with that, I think, in the church over a period of time when somebody will just demand, you've got to do this, you've got to do what I say. You know, whether it's the Inquisition where, and I'm not wanting to compare that necessarily to the Lord's church, but you got the Inquisition where they're killing people and torturing people to get them to convert to a particular religion. Well, it's the same thing we've got going on with Islam today. They're doing the same thing. It doesn't change the person's mind. It makes them slaves to what somebody else thinks. And what we want to do, and what I want for myself and for everybody, and especially for you all, is that you get to think about it for yourself. Because ultimately you will stand before Jesus Christ as he will be your judge. So you got to be right with him. Okay. So are you following me?
Amen.
So far.
So what you'd say is, could you say this then, is we need to respect each other's right as we have our free moral.
Yeah, our right to the free moral choice would, I believe, demands that we give other people the right to make those decisions for themselves. Now, it's not wrong for us to say, hey, I believe in God, now what you want to do, you go ahead, but I think you're wrong, and I think you're going to be condemned for that, but that's your choice. Now, if you want to discuss it, we'll sit down and discuss it. They don't want to discuss it. They don't want to know the truth. Okay? But this is going to run me out of time. We're going to have another week. But that's okay. That's okay. Next week we'll talk about 1 Kings 3. Discussing this with a friend who's a preacher about being upfront, honest with people when we're trying to convert them. In other words, I've told you all the story before, right? About the Lutheran guy who moves to a Catholic territory, right? Controlled by the Catholics. And he's in the habit of every Friday barbecuing a beef, right? Catholics don't eat meat on Friday. So the Catholics go to the priest, hey, look what he's doing. He's driving us crazy. He's not supposed to be doing that, and we can't do it. Go talk to him. So the priest goes and talks to him. He says, listen, you're barbecuing beef. You know, we don't believe in eating beef on Friday. It's our religion. We know that you're a Lutheran. Listen, you were born a Lutheran, but now you're living in a Catholic territory. You need to become a Catholic. And the guy agrees, and they go down to the church, and he's baptized into the Catholic Church. Right? And when the guy comes up out of the water, the priest says, you were born a Lutheran. You've always been a Lutheran, but today you are a Catholic. Right? Guy goes home Friday, and you know what he does? He goes out and he barbecues a beef. All right? And the Catholic people go to the priest. Oh, look, he's doing it again. You need to go talk to him. The priest runs down there. What are you doing? What are you doing? And he gets there just in time to hear him say, you were born a beef. You've always been a beef, but today you are a fish. I'm trying to think of the phrase to try to make sure that I get it correct. But the idea of it is, okay, a man persuaded against his will is of the same opinion still. Brothers and sisters, if we trick somebody into the church, if we convert somebody to baptism, because that's what we've taught, oh, you got to be baptized. Okay, I'll be baptized. I've seen people that have done it. I didn't like it, but what could I do? They were taught to say, I believe that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God. You baptize them and you never see them again. What was it? They're of the same opinion still. They have not become a disciple of Jesus Christ. You can convert them to baptism. You can convert them. Oh, the Church of Christ is the only church. It's the right church. Listen, I believe that. I believe that. The Bible, the church that the Bible talks about is Christ's church. That's what we need to be a member of. But if I just convert a person to the church, what happens in churches? It's made up of people. It's made up of human beings. And sometimes we revert back to that human status, sons of men, rather than being sons of God. But if you convert them to Christ, who is the objective truth, they're going to be looking for truth, and they're going to be looking for the right way. And as they study their Bibles, they're going to be looking at and assuring themselves over and over, yes, baptism was necessary for salvation. They're going to, yes, there is only one church. It is Christ's church that is mentioned in the Scriptures. And they may say, this one that I'm involved with isn't acting like that. I'm going to go find out what it is. But see, that's their individual liberty of finding, seeking their God and following Him. Okay?
Amen.
That's the point of it. But again, you just convert somebody. Oh, you know, we got the friendliest congregation in town. You ought to come and join us. I've heard that one before. And people will come, even, you know, from other congregations, just transfer their membership, and then all of a sudden they find out this isn't such a friendly place, you know. And they're upset. Why? Because they've been sold a bill of goods. That's why we look to that objective truth, Jesus Christ, as it is put forth in the Scriptures, because it's His story. It's not our story. It's not her story. His story. We call it history. Because, did I go back? Do I go back? Let me see. Where can I go? Where can I thought I had it written down here. Truth is used objectively, signifying the reality lying at the basis of an appearance, the manifested veritable essence of a matter. So when we're talking about truth, we're talking about something that is historically proven. Now, somebody can look at it and say, oh, I just don't believe Jesus could be resurrected. I think that was just a story. But I think that Christianity is good. So I'll be a Christian, but I don't believe Jesus was resurrected from the dead. Is that possible?
No.
No. It's not possible. Because that is a primary foundation of Christianity. You see how it works?
Amen.
And that's what we're looking at. It can be proven historically. I thought I had it here. Tonight, in tonight's lesson, there's going to be a part of it that will talk about this concept of something that is, how as we're looking at Scripture, that we're going to look at a point and show, you know, just make ourselves take a deeper look at it and say, oh, now when you see it, you'll say, now I understand what you're talking about. Because what we tend to do as human beings, if we have a particular thought or philosophy or a theology about something, and we see a shadow of it in Scripture, we want to grab a hold of it and make it a substance. And it doesn't work. And I'll show you why tonight. You want to be back for that, won't you,
Right.
Charlie?
Amen.
Stay tuned for that.
Okay. Next Sunday morning, I promise you, we will talk about 1 Kings 3:16 through 28. If you want to read that sometime this week, it might be helpful.